my life took an unexpected turn. Reflecting on the past, I'm struck by how everything transformed silently, almost imperceptibly, while I remained unaware. I had it all: a loving husband, a beautiful home, a comfortable life. Yet, a void lingered, an unnameable ache within me. I'm Rebecca, and this is my story. My husband, Matthew, is a driven businessman. He's relentless, constantly striving for greater heights. I still admire that about him. Eventually, his work took over his life. He worked late, traveled often, and even at home, he was absent. Conversations dwindled, dinners fell silent, and silence became the voice of our marriage. I convinced myself it was just how things were. I convinced myself that every marriage has its ups and downs, and that soon, things would improve. Days became weeks, and weeks stretched into months. Suddenly, I was a stranger in my own home, sharing space with a man who was once my best friend, now just a distant acquaintance. Matthew loved me, but it wasn't enough. I understood he cared in his own way. He cared for me, ensured I had what I needed, and always remembered special days. Yet a void lingered, an undeniable absence. The warmth, the bond, the deep sense of being truly seen and heard. I craved a moment free from distractions, a night to reconnect and share like we once did. I gave him my all. I organized dinners, proposed trips, and shared my feelings softly, yearning for his understanding. Yet his response never changed. "It will get better soon, Rebecca. Just a bit more, just a bit more." That phrase lingered in our marriage, a promise that never came true. And then Alex appeared. Alex had been with our family for almost 2 years. He was our driver, yet he was so much more, someone who truly saw us. He saw my sadness, my silence, my wandering mind. He wasn't overbearing, yet he made me feel seen. It began with the little things. A warm good morning, Mrs. Carter, accompanied by a sincere smile. Casual chats on drives, just friendly exchanges about the weather, the city, or the latest news. Eventually, those brief chats turned into the highlights of my day. One afternoon, after Matthew departed for another business trip, I sat in the back seat, gazing out the window, consumed by my thoughts. Alex's eyes met mine in the rearview mirror, a moment of hesitation hanging heavy in the air. "Is everything all right, ma'am?" His question was simple, yet the way he asked it stopped me in my tracks. It was more than politeness. It was genuine concern. I nearly ignored it, as I always did. But that day, something stopped me. I said I was fine, but then I sighed. "I really have no idea." Alex simply nodded, silently assuring me it was okay to feel this way. For the first time in ages, I felt truly heard. It wasn't explosive or immediate. It was simply effortless. A brief moment that brought back the feeling of being seen, of being understood, and that's where it all started. The days that followed felt changed, though I couldn't say how. Life remained unchanged. Matthew was as busy as always, and I was stuck in my same routines. Yet a change stirred within me. It was soft, silent, but unmistakable. Each day, I eagerly anticipated my rides, those fleeting exchanges that shattered the day's silence. Alex respected every boundary, never crossed a line, yet his words carried a warmth that touched my heart. He made me feel alive, not just a wife in waiting. I convinced myself it was nothing at first. What harm could come from a simple conversation? I did nothing wrong. I never betrayed Matthew. Over time, I discovered how much I cherished those conversations, how deeply I valued having someone who truly listened. Matthew called one evening to say his trip was extended. "Once more. Only a few more days, Rebecca," he whispered. "I swear I'll make it right." I had lost track of how often he repeated that. I had moved past the hurt. I felt exhausted. I ended the call and sighed, massaging my temples. The house was vast, echoing with loneliness. Loneliness became my companion, but I never embraced it. For years, I made excuses for Matthew, convincing myself this was marriage. Was it truly? Is this what isolation feels like? That night, I chose the front steps over my bed. The cool air embraced me, while stars scattered across the sky. I hugged my knees, overwhelmed by the heavy silence surrounding me. The footsteps were silent until Alex's voice broke the stillness. "Tough day?" I gasped, eyes wide. He always left as soon as he dropped me off. I never thought he would still be here. I agreed. Something along those lines. He paused briefly, then took a seat several feet away, maintaining a respectful distance. "Is there anything I can help with?" A weary laugh escaped me. "Only if you can bring my husband back." Alex fell silent. He gazed at the sky, weighing my words with deep thought. After a pause, he said, "You must miss him deeply." I glanced at him then. Truly see him. His eyes held no judgment, no pity. Simply silent comprehension. "I confess I do. Or at least I believe I do. Missing someone who is never truly present is a deep ache." The words escaped me, and in that instant, embarrassment washed over me. Alex nodded, his understanding palpable. We lingered in silence, time stretching between us. It felt natural and easy. It was, above all, peaceful. It had been so long since I simply sat with someone, free from the need to fill the quiet with empty chatter. With a heavy sigh, I rose to my feet. "I need to go inside," I said. Alex nodded and rose. "Sleep well, Mrs. Carter." I paused, just for an instant. "Call me Rebecca." He smiled at me briefly. "Sweet dreams, Rebecca." Stepping inside, a long-lost feeling washed over me. It was not guilt. It was not regret. It was truly extraordinary. A truth I wasn't prepared to face. I woke up early the next morning. The house stood in silence, as it always did. I brewed a cup of coffee and sat by the window, witnessing the world awaken. As the neighbors' kids rode their bikes and an older couple strolled with their dog, I felt like a mere observer in my own life. I looked at my phone. Matthew hasn't reached out. No calls missed. I expected it. Later that day, Alex came to take me to a long-awaited appointment. He greeted me with his familiar polite smile as I got into the car. "Morning, Rebecca." Hearing my name, not just Mrs. Carter, brought an unexpected smile to my face. It was a warm embrace. "Good morning, Alex." As we drove, he glanced at me and smiled, a moment that felt both familiar and profound. "You feel different today." I arched an eyebrow. "In what way is it different?" He simply shrugged. "More energized." "Be true to you." I didn't know how to react. Did I truly reflect who I am? What did that truly mean? I chose to shift the topic. "Share a piece of yourself with me," I urged. Alex was taken aback. "Me?" I agreed. "You seem to know me well, yet I barely know you." He paused, contemplating before he replied. "Not much to share, honestly. I was raised in a small town, then relocated here a few years back. I've driven for a while, but I've experienced much more." "What do you mean?" He offered a faint smile. "A touch of it all. I spent time in construction and did some mechanic work. Driving clicked perfectly. I tilted my head, questioning everything. "Do you love it?" He stopped. "Some days, absolutely. Connecting with others brings me joy. Driving brings me joy. Sometimes, I question if I should be on a different path." I nodded, feeling that deeply. "I understand." I arrived at my appointment and paused as I got out of the car. "Thank you for the ride, Alex." His smile lit up the room. "Always here for you, Rebecca." Upon entering, a strange feeling washed over me. I was excited for the drive home. In the coming weeks, our talks became essential to my daily life. They lacked drama or life-altering significance, yet they felt easy and comforting. It was comforting to have someone to talk to, someone who truly listened and wasn't preoccupied. One afternoon, driving back from the store, I turned to Alex and asked, "Can I ask you something?" He caught my gaze in the mirror. "Absolutely. What keeps you here with us?" I inquired. "There's likely something better out there for you. A better paycheck." He paused, silence hanging heavy before he spoke. "I stay because I care about the people I work with." His words stunned me. I gazed at him, hoping to find a hint that his words were mere politeness. His face radiated sincerity. A smile broke across my face. I'm so grateful you chose to stay. He paused, silence hanging heavy. He whispered, "Me too." My heart raced. I convinced myself it didn't matter. Only words. Only kindness. I always knew, deep down. A shift had occurred. I kept convincing myself that nothing was unfolding. Alex was simply being kind. I was deeply thankful for his presence in my life. I felt so alone. Our conversations felt innocent. I always knew the truth inside. A change had occurred. The way I lingered in the car after we got home said it all. I found myself eagerly anticipating our conversations, perhaps too much. His words lingered, haunting me long after he left. Still, I pressed on. I never intended to cross a line. I never meant for it to escalate. I couldn't ignore how desperately I craved those moments of warmth, connection, and being truly seen. That evening, Matthew called again. "I need to stay another week, Rebecca."
He spoke.
His voice hurried, unfocused, revealing a mind elsewhere. I promised I'd be home, but chaos has taken over. You get it, right? I shut my eyes and inhaled deeply. "Yes," I whispered. "I get it." "Thank you," he said, a wave of relief washing over him. "I promised to make it right." I nodded, unseen but resolute. Understood. I wasn't sure I could trust him anymore. That night, I sat on the patio, gazing at the stars. The door creaked open, but I only realized when Alex's voice broke the silence. "Is it okay if I join you?" Surprised, I looked up at him and nodded. "Proceed." He sat next to me, yet a chasm lay between us. Silence stretched between us. The night was still, serene. At last, Alex shattered the silence. "Are you all right?" A soft laugh escaped me. "You ask me that frequently." He said it plainly, I mean it. I turned to him, desperate for answers, seeking the reason behind his unwavering concern, his keen awareness of my struggles. "I don't know. It feels like an eternity waiting for my husband to come home, and I can't even remember what that moment would feel like now." Alex fell silent, lost in thought. He said, "You deserve more than this weight." His words struck me deeply. I looked down, fighting the lump in my throat. "I no longer know what I deserve," I whispered. Alex hesitated to reply. When he finally spoke, his voice was gentle. "Happiness is your right." I shut my eyes, inhaling unsteadily. "Happiness is complex. It shouldn't feel impossible," Alex said. In that instant, our eyes locked, and everything else faded away. I sought something, reassurance, comfort, a reason to trust his words. Just as I opened my mouth, the unmistakable sound of a car in the driveway interrupted me. My heart froze. I rose abruptly, hands trembling, and moved toward the door. Alex stood, his expression a mystery. The front door swung open. Matthew stood there. He appeared weary, his suit crumpled, his face blank as he placed his briefcase down. His brow furrowed as he looked up and saw me standing there. "Rebecca?" I nodded, struggling to grasp that he was really here. "You're back already." He let out a heavy breath. Things ended quicker than I thought. He looked away, but in that brief moment, his eyes darted to Alex. His face gave nothing away, yet his stance spoke volumes. Alex took a deep breath. "I need to leave." He glanced at me, our eyes locking for a fleeting second, then he walked away to his car, silence hanging heavy between us. I saw him go, my heart racing. Matthew moved in. "Is everything all right?" I made myself nod. "Everything's okay." He looked at me, sighed, and ran a hand through his hair. "I'm so tired," he whispered. "I'm going to shower and then sleep." I agreed. Understood. As he vanished upstairs, I stood alone in the living room, feeling utterly lost. Alex's words lingered in my thoughts. "You are worthy of happiness." For the first time in ages, I confronted a question I had long evaded. Was I really? In that instant, the answer became clear. No, I wasn't. I could no longer pretend.